Hi, welcome to Video Games for Self-Care. I'm Eric Blendon, Program Director for Child's Play Charity.
Hi, I'm Jeff Soulier. I'm an account specialist with NPD Games. I work with a variety of publishers, manufacturers, and organizations within the video games industry, including Child's Play. I manage that relationship. And I was also early part of the classification involved in the guide project that we're going to be talking to you guys about today.
Hi, I'm Anthony Silva. I'm an operations analyst at NPD. I run the classification team for games out of our Carlsbad office. I was one of the original contributors on this project and do most of the classification on the therapeutic games week to week.
I wanted to thank you for coming to see our panel. We're going to be in the chat during the whole panel, so if you have any questions or comments or need some links or whatever, feel free to ask us there. A little bit about Child's Play. So we were founded as a stunt in 2003 by Mike and Jerry of Penny Arcade as a pushback to some of the people who believed that games were terrible and were doing terrible things. They reached out to Seattle Children's Hospital and built a wish list of games and toys, things like crayons, all kinds of stuff that would be useful to them during the holiday season, and threw it out to the community. And the community responded overwhelmingly. Almost $250,000 of stuff was bought within less than 2 months, overwhelming their garages and forcing them to rent U-Hauls to get it there. And then over the years, after that, the charity was formed as an official charity, a 501c3 registered in the U.S. And over the years, the community, you folks, have given enormously, raising millions and millions of dollars that allows us to both get games and toys into hospitals, but also invest in tools like this guide that can really help hospitals use games more therapeutically.
For Anthony and I, we before we were with NPD, we were with a company called EDAR. EDAR stood for Electronic Entertainment Design and Research, and it was founded in 2006 by industry veterans Jeff Sacken and Greg Short. You might actually recognize Jeff Sacken from the awesome video games data talks that he's given at PAX for several years. Now, the company EDAR, the aim of it was to make the video games industry smarter with metadata. When we say metadata, we're talking about facts about video games, things like release date, genre, platform, as simple as, ESRB rating. There's an objective fact that we record. And over the next 10 years, we took this approach and we researched as many games that came out as we possibly could over as many kind of vectors as we could, and we developed this huge database of over 7 million facts about nearly 90,000 products. And Anthony, you've been there since pretty much the beginning of this. So do you want to speak a little bit about our metadata?
Yeah, metadata on each product that Jeff's talking about, all those the 90,000. There's about 1,500 facts right now per product that we track. And of those different categories, like Jeff talked about, we have things like genre, we have game space, we have cam perspective. And he mentioned something about objective and subjective facts. And those objective data, like release date, like sales, are things that have one possible answer. Or if you look at game genre, that is a subjective thing, which we use definitions to develop a methodology of researching. In genre, we're looking at the actual gameplay, the actions that the user undertakes to play. We're looking at the game-defining features. So, for example, in an RPG, there's a heavy focus on character advancement, or an arcade game, there's a heavy focus on score and limited lives. And then finally, for genre, we go ahead and group like objects. So we're grouping things together that belong together.
For sure. So EDAR, with all this metadata work and this huge database, we began our collaboration with Child's Play in 2014. 2 years later, NPD purchased EDAR, kind of recognizing our expertise in the database. Using it with NPD's sales data just made sense. And EDAR was acquired in 2016. So games are good for you. We can all agree on that. But especially right now in 2020, I think it's really important to remember that video games can be a great avenue for self-care. I mean, obviously, it has not been a great year for many people. The ongoing effects of the coronavirus pandemic have left people locked at home, a lot of people dealing with serious mental health issues. And we think it's important to remind people that games can help you feel better. Of course, you don't have to look far to find examples of this in the market. in March and April, we saw gigantic engagement with video games and the games industry because of the pandemic, or perhaps informed by the pandemic. The huge success, for example, of Animal Crossing New Horizons. Yeah, it's a great game. It's a first party game from Nintendo on a platform that is selling extremely well, the Nintendo Switch. But it also has the ideal premise for right now. All we want to do is get away from all of this. So what could be better than an island getaway where you're just hanging out with these animal friends and having a good time? I think people that really resonated with people who were feeling trapped at that time. And I think this moment generally, culturally, especially here in this country, is that we're being reminded of how important play is, and that games can be a great space to still get that social engagement that we really need when we're all isolated. So obviously there are well documented benefits of gaming. The top one that you probably think of first, and I certainly do, is that games are helpful with eye-hand coordination and cognitive performance. I know when I was a little kid, I definitely used that excuse many times when told to go outside, but it's true. Games can help with eye-hand coordination and your cognition, but there are other things that games can do that might not be so obvious. Games can help us with a sense of accomplishment and making progress when perhaps we feel like things have stagnated. Similarly, games can provide an escape or distraction from the upsetting and familiar. I know, all of us we're locked down right now. We're not in the same room like we'd like to be. We're all in our homes for the most part. And that cycle of that routine can really weigh down on you. And games can offer you an escape from that, or ever so briefly. Games can also really help us develop a better sense of empathy and care about others, especially role playing games that invite you to step into the shoes of another character, live their life, make decisions as them. We find this can be helpful for that as well.
Yeah, so Jeff talks about all of those documented benefits of games and in some cases assumed benefits of games. So for this project, was that going to be enough for us to move forward on recommending games? And the answer was definitely no, that we were going to have to collaborate with professionals, and we're also going to have to look at what we were tracking. So I mentioned earlier those objective and subjective facts. Prior to this project, we really only had a few sections that were truly subjective, one being game genre, the other really being literary genre or theme, like if something's a horror game or a science fiction game. But a lot of our data focused on things like what's the camera perspective? Is this 2D or is this 3D? And while those are incredibly important and track well with sales and are great to do reports, they were going to be a challenge here for what we wanted to accomplish. We really only had game genre, and that was just not going to be sufficient. So you're going to see what we did to shore that up.
So the core idea was that we would use this metadata and our recommendation engine to provide games that would be useful for these applications. But we first had to figure out the right components to make that possible. So we did seek out third-party expertise to verify, some of what we thought might be true. We wanted to make sure that we had real backing here. So we work with three people primarily on this. Dr. Deborah Lieberman, PhD. She was the director of the National Health Games Research Program out of UCSB. We also worked with Dr. Daniel Johnson, PhD. He is the lead of the Queensland University of Technology Games Research and Interaction Design Lab. We also work with Dr. Douglas Gentile. He is a PhD in child psychology and over 25 years of experience conducting research with both adults and children. So with the expertise that they brought to the table, we were able to look at our findings and take into account what they were telling us about what was going to be the most effective way to look at these games, to what factors were going to be important when we're thinking about therapeutic application. Out of that, we kind of narrowed it down to 6 broad categories. So first, we have games that are for pain. These are games that would distract from either immediate pain or a dull chronic pain, something where you just want to not think about how you're feeling. These games are good for that. We also have boredom, which is split into 2 categories. We have short-term boredom, which is good for waiting room situations and more short stay. You're talking about 10 to 15-minute sessions, maybe short periods of time, which you just need to kill some time. You need an immediate pick up and play game that you can put down just as fast. We also have extended boredom. Extended boredom is kind of the inverse of that. You're looking at a longer stay. Maybe you're in hospital. Maybe you just need a game that's going to keep you engaged for much longer. You're talking about 30 to 40 hour games, longer than that, games that you could play forever, ideally.
Yeah, then we also have anxiety, much like pain. Here we're distracting, in this case, from worry or anxiety. Sadness, games to improve the mood, discourage negative thought patterns, and cognitive impairment for gamers that may be medicated or be cognitively impaired. And these are low impact games with limited fail states.
So after we looked at these different symptoms, we worked out the hierarchy itself. We have key factors on this hierarchy, including things like subject matter, genre, mood, tone, frequency of input, complexity, that sort of thing. Anthony?
Yeah, so some of these we're going to take things that we already had in the original hierarchy, but we were just adding so much more based on that feedback. And so entirely new sections of the hierarchy were going to have to be created, like Jeff pointed out, like subject matter, like mood and tone and frequency of input, and complexity of input, section length, goals, presence of nurture mechanics, presence of comedy, all things that are going to inform more than our metadata was, more than ESRB was, really more than any data was about games other than playing the game itself. Really, our metadata is almost able to give that complete rundown. So based on these data points, in each category, each game gets a score. So of those 6 things that we believe that we can help with via game features, each game is classified and then verified against that. And then furthermore, we also use recency of release, the platform, or the review score to add an additional element upon that classification.
Right. So here we're seeing an example of the hierarchy itself. So this is actually a little bit of the meat and potatoes of what Anthony's talking about. If you wanted to walk through this.
Right. Yeah. Great. We're looking straight at the accessibility hierarchy. When I was talking about frequency of input and complexity of input, we mentioned the frequency. The complexity of the input is the actual button maps. So if you think of an Angry Bird style game or a game that's just a clicker, you're only inputting in that game in one way. It's very easy to comprehend, and there's not really any friction between the user and their input. You have moderate based games, but if you look at the high complexity games like a Madden, you may have the face buttons on that, but then pressing L1 gives you an entire new set, and pressing L2 gives you a third set. So in those games, you could see how that would be a real accessible barrier to gamers with cognitive impairment, or perhaps pain games where you're not trying to have them get any friction between input and the game. We also track motion controls, again, another big factor in accessibility. And in accessibility, we're also tracking the cognitive accessibility of the game. So both the mechanics of the games, the systems that are involved, and then the learning curve. So you can look at a game like Minecraft, which has a whole bunch of systems in it, or any RPG. So you're going to see that the complexity of mechanics in a game like that is going to be really high. But in the case of Minecraft, the learning curve of Minecraft to pick up and play Minecraft is actually low, right? That someone can actually pick up that game, go into the open world of that Minecraft game, and actually get some value out of traversing that without hitting a fail state. Now, with other games like Civilization, the learning curve on that is much higher, where someone isn't able to just pick up and start playing that and having some initial value out of it. So by kind of breaking these important things of the game into these multiple variables, we're able to query like we would on any of our other metadata to kind of help us get these best games.
Yeah, and just a little bit more on the hierarchy here. Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead, Anthony. Take it away.
I was going to say we're going to move straight on to mood and setting, and that's another just really important thing, because as we're talking, we just looked at the accessibility of the game and how that might help inform a title. But as when we started out in this project, that we're going to need to know a lot about these games to get these good games. And in this case, accessibility wasn't going to be all we needed. So for example, if you look at a great game for pain would be high frequency games with low complexity or high frequency, you may just do a query just to get against that. And you're going to get games like Heavy Rain, which is going to be something you do not want to be recommending to preteens. But when you take mood and setting and you're able to then look at this hierarchy here, you might be able to look at a game with a light tone or a great mood, and you're going to get something like Dragon's Lair, which is a perfect game for pain. So Jeff will run a little bit more through the mood and setting hierarchy, because you can look through that. It's real fun.
This is probably my favorite hierarchy in the entire database. Honestly, I really like
Yeah.
I like looking at subject matter and tone, because I think it's very important that you capture the balance between tone and subject matter. Another classic example, I think it's listed here. You're looking at something like Borderlands, right? Something who has, not a light tone, but a jovial tone for being kind of a dark themed game about some dark things. We also have here music and sound. It's just an important thing to call out. Sensory input is gigantic for a lot of people, and especially in games, music can really impact that. So we have some special call outs on the hierarchy here for things like high energy music, dissonant music, or kind of placid, calming, relaxing music. And all these inputs kind of inform how we rank the titles on the other end. I think about something like, like Doom has dissonant music as much as I would enjoy it. And that's maybe not the kind of music that you want in every game you would recommend for these categories.
Right. So having that deep hierarchy, once we classify all of those games, and we've been doing over 1,000 per year, many of those don't make the recommended list, but you have to do all of those titles that the best ones surface to the top. So how do we do that? What are the best titles, and how do we verify that? Well, first, we talked about those symptoms, and we create benchmark titles based on that feedback. So when we came up with the best in class things that could help for the pain system, we went ahead and actually created a test game, filled it out with what we consider would be the perfect 100% score. So for example, high frequency, this and that, and we did that for each category. And then for every game we've classified, we actually run that through our recommendation engine against those test games, and each game gets a score against that ideal game. We do that per platform, and then establish rankings by that platform, and then we review and adjust on top of that based on things again like review score and the release date, and then also so we don't have like 6 Mario games, even though Mario is scoring very high. We want to be able to give a bit of a variety to Child's Play as well.
Yeah, it's really important to us that the recommendations, despite the fact that we're using the metadata, we're using the recommendation engine, we're building out these lists using, what we think is really good data. We also want to have a little bit of a human gut check at the end, and that's kind of what that last step is. Really, just making sure that we look at the stuff and go, yeah, does this feel right? And as Anthony said, kind of removing redundancies in older titles. So once we have all of those rankings, we have the results, and this is actually pretty fun. We're going to walk through some of the titles that we have recommended to Child's Play, and that Child's Play has been able to recommend using our guide that we've collaborated on together to help people play games and feel better. So let's start with pain. It's kind of the most straightforward one. I mean, it's the top example for a reason. For pain games, you're looking at a high frequency of input, as we've talked about, to distract from pain. You're looking at shorter play sessions. Anthony, anything else you want to call it for pain specifically?
Yeah, typically also low complexity of mechanics and learning curve. You're looking to get right into it.
We're talking about very, not necessarily Angry Birds, but you're talking about 1 or 2 buttons, ideally something a little bit more immediate goals that you can go after. You shouldn't be confused in a pain game. So here are some of the examples for pain that we've delivered. Top here we have Tetris Effect. It's a recent version of Tetris, and you probably know about Tetris. You've probably seen it before, but it does not lose its effectiveness. Here you've got really soothing music, a lot of great sensory input, and an immediate, simple game to focus on. It's a high skill ceiling in Tetris, and for my money, I think Tetris Effect is a good version of the game. Another exciting recommendation here, another game you've probably played, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and the key thing here is not just that it's Mario Kart and it's good, it's that it both has the high frequency of input, the simplicity. There are accessibility options in Mario Kart 8 that allow you to auto steer, auto accelerate. All of this stuff sort of brings together this cohesive package that makes Mario Kart a really good recommendation for this category. puzzle action games in general. I mean, we cited Tetris, but Overcooked 2, also a really good game for pain. It has frequent inputs, short sessions. It's a real wacky thing. It's over quickly. And though there's a lot of kind of chaos in it, it's going to distract you from the pain. So that's a look at pain games.
Right. Also in there in the 13 and up category, you're going to get a lot of arcade shooters. You're going to get some shoot 'em ups.
Yeah.
They work really well.
I was focusing on all audiences there, but yeah, that's where you get your shooters for sure, because left trigger, right trigger, it feels good.
All right. So next we have the Boredom. We talked about those are best for waiting room stays. And you're looking at approachable mechanics for pick up and play. There's a moderate to high frequency of input, shorter play sessions. So one of the great things is we were showing that hierarchy, right? That was just a cutout. We could spend 2 hours just talking about the
There's
hierarchy.
way more.
One of the other sections we did was goals, right? And very specifically, there are short-term goals, things like match victory, right? And boredom short-term is where you're going to find a lot of those, right? Where you're just getting in, you're trying to win a match, or maybe you're trying to beat a level. Level completion was another one. So yeah, immediate goals and objectives to pursue. And some of those games that we came up for it, obviously everyone's talking about it right now, and it really is. It's a perfect at the moment short-term boredom game is Fall Guys. You're getting high engagement. The matches are relatively short, and they have a quick objective. You're just getting in there, you're playing, you're having some fun. Rocket League's another one. It's incredibly immediately engaging. You're looking at, again, match victory, and you're getting some great excitement in a short period of time. And just another shout out to how we're cutting these games. And so you're seeing these games, and of course you might think of, wow, these are some of the best games. Of course you'd recommend them. How we're doing the depths of these mechanics, we can look and see Fall Guys is really a perfect game for short-term boredom, but it might not be the best game for anxiety, and really kind of recommending the most optimal games for the best symptoms, not just good games.
Yeah, not just saying, well, here's a high rated game that looks like it might work. I mean, and that's why we had to go through this process to make sure we could recommend these things that really feel like they're airtight. As Anthony said, there's an inherent tension to battle royale style games. And I know that even with simplified inputs and a very straightforward goal, I still haven't won a match of Fall Guys. So hopefully soon. So boredom, the other half of boredom, obviously we have extended boredom. As I mentioned earlier, you're looking at a narrative focus a lot for these games. You have something that really draws the player through and continues to engage them over time. Not necessary, but very helpful for this category. Something like we were talking about Rocket League with a learning curve that's gradual and simple mechanics. Here you want a gradual learning curve and a high ceiling of mechanics. You want something where you're going to get better at the systems in the games. You're going to play longer play sessions, or you're going to have the option to play long or short. You want kind of that variability there as well, but we're kind of focusing on longer sessions for extended boredom. Here's some games for extended boredom. We have the recent Paper Mario Origami King. Obviously, there have been some Paper Marios over the years. This one seems to be one of the more immediate and accessible. It has an interesting spatial thinking combat system with moving these rings around. It has plenty of great writing. It's received top marks for that. We find it to be a pretty charming game with charming music, but also fits that kind of extended play session narrative thrust model. For a game on the other side with not much narrative thrust, but just and seemingly endless depth. I mean, it's Minecraft, right? Minecraft remains one of the biggest games in the world, and it's because it's on every platform you can think of. It's got PvE content. It has creative mode, custom servers. There's so many things you can do in Minecraft, and then that's not even touching creative mode, which is, again, we're reducing those things like fail states and objectives to just kind of reducing it to its core experience. So Minecraft, very flexible, scores pretty well in a lot of categories, but we think it's especially good for extended boredom.
Right, and as another one that scores great in all categories, but really is a great thing here is Animal Crossing. So people, growing their island and really building it up, get a great sense of accomplishment from that over a long period of time. So we talked a little bit how maybe Fall Guys isn't the best for anxiety. So let's talk about what is good for anxiety, right? So of course a pleasant setting or tone helps, but again the less frequent inputs and the limited fail states. Uh, not to, We're trying to reduce frustration here in playing a game where you pick it up and you're losing or you feel like you can't make any headway. That's just not helping when you're feeling anxious, and they're generally slower paced. So we're looking at the games we have for that. So Goose Game, right? So Goose Game, it does have some a little bit higher inputs, but the thing about that is it's empowering. It's got colorful visuals, and the objectives are there, but it's a non-linear game. You can just go around and cause havoc. You can just mess around and kind of have fun, and it's really pleasing in that way. Another way Jeff talked about was those kind of puzzle platformers, and here's one with gardens in between, where really you're getting that great music, you're getting those soft colors, and you're really engaging with a different world in a non-threatening way. And for those anxiety games, it could be really helpful in that way.
Definitely. And yeah, the thing with Goose Game is like as you said, it's really it's where the music, the style, the comedy, all this stuff is really elevating this game for anxiety. Whereas like if you're looking at one factor, if you're looking at controls, maybe
Right.
you look at this game and say maybe it's not ideal, but that's why we look at all the different factors so that we can really drive home what's good for what. So sadness, anxiety games, you're looking to calm. Sadness, you're really looking to elevate mood. So as I was just talking about with the Goose Game, it also kind of ends up in these categories as well because it has pleasant setting and tone. But here's the simplicity of inputs again for sadness. There are a variety of other factors here in setting and tone that need to be called out, but sadness is one of those pretty specific ones. Here are a couple games that we have recommended for sadness that I really like. So one of the things I want to point out is that we've covered a lot of games on a lot of platforms, and Threes is something that eventually was ported to console. It's a really good, uh, chill puzzle game, a matching puzzle, math game, and it's just got a lot of charm for a game like that. There's a lot of pleasantness in sound design, and the little tiles have faces on them, and it's a nice game. I guess it's nice.
Yeah, no, but yeah, you're also looking at goals, right? You're giving
Of course.
short, consumable things that the person's they're getting through those small challenges, and they're getting wins along the way in a setting that's pleasing.
Right. Yeah. You're looking at immediate goals. You're achieving things. You're making progress. Songbird Symphony is one of our favorite recommends. This is a musical platformer about a bird trying to reunite with its family. It's got intuitive controls. Again, very charming game. And one of the things that we're really proud of about this game is that we delivered a recommendation for Songbird Symphony to Child's Play. Right before Hitaku published a story about this game, really, calling it out and recommending it. And this is kind of an example of what we're talking about when we say, like, we're not just picking the popular games. We're hopefully picking games that will be popular and are fitting these categories. So I think another example, Anthony Booth's Yoku's Island Express.
Yuku's, I was impressed. Yeah, we were
Yeah.
on that one a full month and a half before it got an article. But really, it's such a joy doing this classification work, seeing all these games, and then really finding those hidden gems that in some cases are so fantastic for these categories, but might not have the discoverability otherwise.
Yeah, and the volume of releases today is so great that we're happy to find these things that might slip through the cracks otherwise, and hopefully elevate them. So once we have all of this, Anthony, we collect all the games, all of the rankings, and we have the output file put into a nice format. We have designers that take the output. We kind of make recommendations for two key age groups. We're talking over 13 and under 13, as we were talking about before, so that we can get in those shooters for the over 13 crowd, but still recommend things
Right.
like Mario Odyssey, etc. After we've designed the guide, we hand it back to Eric and Child's Play, and they take it away.
So yeah, we get the guides. We have them printed in nice booklets. that we can hand out at hospitals, and we take them around. So we, as we said, we started about 6 years ago, 5 6 years ago. We first had the guides, and at that point, we started actually visiting hospitals as a way to get it out there. Um, and we had a pretty good idea that we knew that we felt like this was going to be useful, but when we visited hospitals and started handing them out, they were just dumbstruck and so thankful. The child life staff have always had a bit of a sort of knowledge or an inkling that the games were helping kids in the hospitals, but to have this guide that they could use as kind of a prescriptive tool. I mean, it's not clinically prescriptive. These aren't clinical symptoms, but they were familiar with that. They could use it, and it was so much more affirming to them to be able to say, "Ah, yes, this game is great for this kiddo who's suffering from long-term pain. Um, I can give this to him, and then I can see the benefits of it." Um, yeah, it was enormously helpful. We've continued to we've handed out, I don't know, gosh, I don't know, probably 8,000 copies of the guide so far in the last 5 years. We visited about 110 different hospitals in that time, and chatted with them, as well as mailing it out regularly every year with our gifts that we send to hospitals, our 185 partner hospitals, and then handing out at conferences like PAX and child life conferences and other places where we are, just to get it out there. We don't we don't make the guide and sell it. We don't do this for charity, right? But we just want this knowledge to be out there. We want the world to see how games can be more therapeutic and how they can help with self-care stuff. um,
Yeah, and here we've got a list of just a few of the hospitals who
mhm.
have used the guide and utilized it. And there's a QR code on the screen. You can scan that if you want to take a look at the guide for yourself. There's a lot of great recommendations in there. A lot of games I actually really like. Which, you start this project and you think, like, what are the recommendations really going to look like? And we were just happy to see that it was great games that we felt like worked.
Yeah, and it's available. It's there. It's on our website. If you are in a place, a school or a hospital or something, and you need some physical copies, let us know. Reach out to us. We're happy to send you physical copies. If you would like to, if you're doing some research or would like some sort of more data on, because the guide has, it only unfortunately has 3 copies of each game in each category, because it's physical and we need
Space.
we need
Yeah.
space
Yeah.
to be
Can't be sending
condensed.
out a novel to people. You
Yeah,
gotta, it's a
but we
booklet.
do get tons more data. I think we get 20 different games in each
Yeah.
category, maybe from
20,
NPD.
25. Yeah.
25, yeah. So
Yeah.
and that's every month. So if you do want more data, please let us know and reach out. Or if
Yeah.
you want to talk about it.
And if you want to talk about it, there's our contact information on the screen. We're we're happy to field any questions about this stuff on the MPD side as well. We're so happy about the work and proud to still be doing it. Um, and in closing, I do want to ask you both a question. Do you have a favorite game that we've recommended in the guide, or do you have a game that you really want to call out that we haven't talked about yet?
I mean, I like, as far as a game that is a winner in hospitals.
Yeah,
Minecraft. We talked about it, Minecraft,
yeah,
but it is it
Yeah.
is so useful in so many categories. The in creative mode, it's
Yeah.
it's pretty great for anxiety because you can just wander around and do anything.
Yep.
In long-term boredom, obviously, even short-term boredom, most kids are so familiar with it that even playing
yeah.
for
It's
10 minutes, they can sort of do something and
it's
and
so
get
ubiquitous
something out.
now. The game is so ubiquitous that it becomes kind of like, and unlike something like Fortnite, which is squarely focused on
Mhm.
competitive play, like you said, you have that creative mode. Anthony, you have a pick, or do you want me to go first?
You can go for it.
I uh, I think two of the games that I see on the lists frequently, that I know this is a little selfish, but Fez. Fez is an adventure
Yeah.
platformer from last generation, and that game has wonderful music. It's got deep puzzles. I think it's a great long-term boredom pick. I think especially 13 up. A lot of those 13 up games, they're not all the action shooters. It's not all dour. This is a very bright, pleasant game that just has beautiful art, and I'd say Fez is a good pick.
I'll also go with the selfish one. It's a pain category. It's the pinball
Yeah,
arcade.
yeah.
Just love those pinball. Play Taxi.
This reminds me, I've in here, is Journey for anxiety.
Yes.
I love
Yeah.
it, and I love
Yeah.
that we and sometimes like it's not always like giant AAA games that filter to the top. Like sometimes they're indie games that that get rated and filter to the top, and then hopefully can benefit so many kids. So
Yeah, one thing I love about Journey in the guide as well is that that is a title that a lot of people would call out. I love that our hierarchy that what we did there for the system we put in place, it does for our system validate that. The Journey, we believe via our system, is a good game for those kind of systems. Yes.
For sure. So that is Therapeutic Games for Self-Care. We hope that you enjoyed it. Please feel free to ask any questions via email or again in the chat. And I hope that you have a wonderful PAX Online. Thank you, Jeff and Anthony.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.